hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin. Check. You already know. Let's go. Welcome to Golden Blue today, everybody. This is a college football channel. So if you like college football, hit the like and subscribe button. It's that simple. Also, send gear to represent your team and be a part of my background forever. All you have to do is send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. You already know, I've put out a ton of conference realignment videos, and it started out as, oh man, this Golden Blue, he won't shut up. Blah, this scenario, that scenario. He's trying to cover every scenario possible. And I got laughed at and made fun of, but now it's turned into a draw. Be honest with me. Be honest with me. One of the main reasons you come to Golden Blue Dude and watch Golden Blue Dude is the conference realignment videos. You know it's true. You know it's true. I come up with some crazy scenarios, but there are some real possibilities out there. And a real possibility that I want to talk about today is, well, conferences might be working together to get the votes needed to dissolve the ACC and break the grant of rights. Because whenever we talk about the ACC or teams getting teams from the ACC, that conversation immediately hits the wall that is known as the grant of rights. The only way around that is to get 8 teams to vote to dissolve and break those grant of rights. Now, a lot of the sources are telling me that right now, at this very moment, the ACC does have those 8 votes needed to dissolve the ACC and break the grant of rights. What I'm hearing is that it's mostly the original ACC teams, the founding ACC teams, and then maybe Notre Dame. Notre Dame might be voting to dissolve the ACC. And I talked about that yesterday as well, that Notre Dame could be the savior or the apocalypse for the ACC. I thought it was a big mistake to allow Notre Dame to have a vote in the stakes of the ACC. I mean, if you want to cut them a piece of the pie, that's fine, whatever. But to give them a vote, that's nonsense. They're not a full-time football member. Well, now Notre Dame might control your destiny in a bad way. They could do it in a good way, yes, but I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing it in a bad way. So on top of that, we could be looking at some collusion between some of these conferences to get those 8 votes. Maybe that's how we got these 8 teams wanting to vote to dissolve. Maybe it's the Big Ten and the SEC. Maybe it's the Big Ten, Big 12, Big Ten, Pac-12, Pac-12, Big 12, Pac-12, Big 10. I don't know. Some form of combination. Now, my best guess would be the Big Ten and the SEC. Those are the 2 conferences that have basically controlled conference realignment. It's basically the Big Ten and the SEC make a move, and then everybody else counters or reacts. But they start it. And of course, they get the best brands. I mean, that's just how it is. They're the 2 conferences that make the most money. So I know for a fact right now that my sources are telling me that the ACC does have those 8 votes to dissolve and break the grant of rights. That's what I'm hearing all over the place. So I'm thinking that a lot of these teams have been promised a spot in a conference if they vote to dissolve the ACC. So what I want to talk about in this video is the destination of each of these teams in the ACC, where they could go when, not if, when the ACC dissolves, because I'm hearing it's going to happen. First up, we'll go from the bigger brands down to the lesser brands. So the first brand we're going to talk about is Clemson. I think Clemson is SEC bound. There is no way around this. The SEC wants Clemson. Clemson's in the right spot for the SEC. And if you look at their renovations on their stadium, that Jumbotron greatly resembles the Jumbotron of Georgia. I mean, down to a T. It looks almost identical. Of course, the Clemson brand versus the Georgia brand separates the 2, but as far as how it looks and the construction of it, those 2 look identical. So yes, I think Clemson goes to SEC. That's going to be a massive pickup for the SEC, and Clemson's going to make a lot of money. And we'll see how Clemson does with an SEC schedule instead of an ACC schedule. The next team, the next biggest brand, Florida State. I also think Florida State's going to head to the SEC. And I know I've heard a lot of people that Florida's against this. So I think Florida's changed their mind, and I don't think Florida has that much pull to where they can block the rest of the votes and say, no, you're not bringing in another Florida team. Florida State will be headed to the SEC. Next biggest brand, North Carolina. I think North Carolina could go to either the SEC or the Big Ten. I do think the Big Ten is interested in North Carolina. North Carolina's in a good spot, a great spot, kind of right on that line where they could go either north or south. The question is, which conference would North Carolina prefer? Personally, I would think the SEC because culturally they fit the SEC better, but you never know. They could go to the Big Ten. All right, next biggest brand, Virginia. I'm just going by what I heard the SEC wanted first. I don't consider Virginia the next biggest brand. We're just going to go in that order. So for Virginia, I think they could go to either the SEC or the Big Ten as well. Honestly, I think Virginia is a better fit in the Big Ten, so I would lean towards the Big Ten. But there's a real possibility that Virginia could go to the SEC. I mean, we flat out heard that the SEC wants Virginia as a travel partner for North Carolina. All right, the next biggest brand, Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech has a lot of choices. The SEC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12. Now, right now, I don't think they're AAU status. I know they're pursuing it, and I know they're really, really close. So they're going to have some choices. The SEC, Big 10, Big 12. And yes, I'm listing the Big 12 because of the Black Diamond Trophy. But if the SEC wants Virginia Tech's going to go to the SEC because they have the biggest money to offer for Virginia Tech. The question is, how interested would the SEC be in Virginia Tech? I listed that as a possibility. I just don't know how interested the SEC would be in Virginia Tech. Big 12 would be great. You'd bring in the Black Diamond Trophy with West Virginia and Virginia Tech. This would be a home run pick for the Big 12. Next biggest brand, the Canes of Miami. I think they could go to either the Big 10 or the Big 12. This just depends on if the Big 10 wants Miami. Miami's also close to AAU status. I know that's stretching a little bit for the Big 10, but hey, they stretched out way west to get USC and UCLA. But I'm leaning more towards the Big 12. I think Miami is more likely to go to the Big 12. We'll see what happens though. Next biggest brand, Duke. I think Duke could go to either the Big 10 or the SEC. I think this depends on whether North Carolina goes to the SEC or the Big 10. I think wherever North Carolina goes, Duke goes, and I think wherever Duke goes, North Carolina goes. The next team is going to be NC State. I think NC State's only choice is going to be going to the Big 12. I don't think the Big 10 wants them, and I don't think the SEC wants them, which is a shame. I think they have a great brand, but I think NC State would have a landing spot in the Big 12. The next team is Pitt, same thing, Big 12. I do think Pitt would fit in the Big 10, but I don't think the Big 10 would want Pitt. And locking in the backyard brawl for the Big 12, man, that is a huge, huge money grab, home run pick. This would be absolutely perfect. As a West Virginia fan, I would love this, especially bringing in Virginia Tech as well. Yes, bring in Pitt, bring in Virginia Tech. Let's play our rivals every stinking year. The next team on deck is going to be Syracuse. I think they could go to either the Big 12 or the Big 10. This all depends if the Big 10 wants Syracuse. I'm not sure if Syracuse has AAU status, so that's a big question mark. So if they don't, then they would probably be headed to the Big 12. And that's a great rivalry between West Virginia and Syracuse. And I do think the Big 12 would make money off of Syracuse, especially with that rivalry. People forget, Syracuse has the biggest football fan base in the ACC, not counting Notre Dame. Yes, that surprised me, but it's a fact. I did a video on that. The next team is Louisville. I think they could possibly have two choices. I think it's the Big 12 or the SEC. And this just depends on if the SEC wants the Louisville and Kentucky rivalry. I don't think the SEC wants Louisville. Therefore, I think they're more likely to go to the Big 12. Once again, this is a great pickup for the Big 12. Imagine this, if the Big 12 picks up Virginia Tech, Miami, Louisville, and Syracuse, those are the 4 picks the Big 12 would need to go after if the ACC does go under. The next brand, Georgia Tech, a better brand than people realize. I think Georgia Tech might draw interest from the Big 10 and the Big 12. I think the Big 12 would love to have Georgia Tech. I think that would be a nice bridge between the southeastern states and the northeastern states. But Georgia Tech also has great academics and AAU status, so they might garner the attention of the Big 10. And if the Big 10 offers, Georgia Tech would go to the Big 10 over the Big 12. Then the last 2 brands, I'm sorry, Wake Forest and Boston College, but I don't think anybody is going to promise you a landing spot. Maybe you can get lucky and slide in a Big 12 situation, or maybe the Pac-12 is that desperate. I mean, y'all do have great academics, so maybe the Pac-12 would be willing to stretch out east to grab Wake Forest and Boston College. And the problem with Wake Forest is the fan base, size of the fan base. I mean, obviously they're having good success in football right now, and they are investing into their football facilities. But this comes down to TV revenue and size of fan base, and Wake Forest, you just don't have a big fan base. That's what's going to hurt you in conference realignment. So y'all let me know in the comments section. Number 1, what do you think about the possibility of the ACC actually having those 8 votes right now as we speak to vote to dissolve, disband, and break the grant of rights? Number 2, if that's true, when does it happen? And number 3, where do you see these teams going from the ACC whenever they do jump ship? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.